The school was quiet in the early morning, the kind of quiet that felt heavy and almost alive. The hallways smelled faintly of chalk and old wood, mixed with a hint of lemon cleaner. In those empty halls, she moved slowly, her broom sweeping across the floor in steady, practiced strokes. At 68, she had been cleaning this school for over 20 years. Every corner, every classroom, every forgotten crumb on the floor, she knew them all. To the students and teachers, she was just the cleaner. The woman who came early and left late, always in the background, always unnoticed. But in those quiet hours before anyone arrived, she felt a small kind of peace, a time when she could be alone with her thoughts. She pushed the mop bucket down the hallway with a soft squeak, the sound echoing in the empty space. Her back ached, and her hands were stiff from years of hard work. But she had learned to move carefully, to let her body rest when it needed to. Her movements were slow but precise, like a dance she had practiced all her life. As she worked, she could hear faint sounds coming from the music room at the end of the hall. The piano there had been played the day before by a student practicing for a recital. The notes were soft, but they seemed to float out of the room and down the hallway. Reaching her ears as she swept, she stopped for a moment and leaned on her broom, listening. The sound of the piano always made her pause. It stirred something deep inside her, a memory she had carried quietly for decades. She had not played a piano in years, not since life had taken her down a different path. But the music reminded her of a time when she had dreams that felt bigger than the world, dreams that had seemed possible once. She shook her head gently, as if trying to push the thoughts away, and went back to her work. She had learned to live without those dreams, to focus on the life she had, the work she did, and the small joys she could find every day. The school began to stir as the first students arrived. The sound of shoes on the floor, lockers slamming, and voices greeting each other filled the halls. She smiled faintly at the familiar chaos. Some students nodded to her as they passed, but most barely noticed she was there. She had learned not to take it personally. Her work was not about recognition. It was about keeping the school clean, keeping things in order so that others could learn and grow. Still, she sometimes wished that someone would see her for more than the uniform she wore and the job she did. Her routine was always the same. She started in the classrooms, emptying trash bins, wiping down desks, and sweeping the floors. She moved with quiet efficiency, never in a hurry, never needing to announce her presence. By the time the first class started, she was usually in the music room, checking that the piano was covered, the floors were clean, and the room was ready for students. Today, as she entered the music room, she paused for a moment, looking at the piano. It was an old instrument, slightly worn, with scratches on the surface and a few keys that did not work perfectly. But it still had a voice, still held the power to fill the room with music. She ran her hand over the polished wood, feeling the smoothness beneath her fingers. Memories came back of a time when she had dreamed of playing this very instrument, of filling halls like this with her music. She had taken lessons as a young woman, hours spent practicing scales, learning the weight of each note, the feel of the keys under her fingers. She had loved it deeply, but life had other plans. She had married young, had children to raise, and had to put her music aside. Over the years, she had cleaned floors, scrubbed windows, and watched her dreams gather dust. Just like the classrooms she cared for now, standing in front of the piano, she felt a pang of longing. She had grown used to living quietly, to moving through the world without drawing attention. But when she touched the piano, she felt a spark of something she had thought was gone forever. Her fingers hovered above the keys for a moment, and she imagined the sound that would come if she pressed them. She smiled faintly, shaking her head at the foolishness of it. She could not play here, not while students were around. It was just a thought, a memory, a small piece of herself that she kept hidden. The morning passed slowly. Classes moved on, students came and went, teachers taught lessons, and she continued her work in the background. At lunch, she sat quietly in the corner of the staff room, eating her sandwich and listening to the hum of conversation. She enjoyed these moments of stillness, even if she was invisible to most people. It was her time to rest, to breathe, to remember that she was more than just a cleaner. She was someone who had loved music once, someone who had dreams that had not died, only waited. In the afternoon, she returned to the hallways, pushing her mop bucket, wiping down railings, and making sure everything was in order. She noticed a group of students laughing as they passed by, and she smiled at their energy. It reminded her of her own youth, of a time when the world felt wide and full of possibility. She felt a quiet sadness mixed with gratitude. Life had not turned out the way she had imagined, but she had survived, and she had found ways to carry on. She had found dignity in work, in routine, and in the small moments that others overlooked. By late afternoon, the school was starting to empty. Students went home, teachers finished their day, and the halls began to quiet once more. She moved toward the music room again, checking that everything was in its place. The piano stood there, silent but waiting, as it had for decades. She felt a strange pull toward it, a feeling she had not experienced in years. She reached out, her fingers brushing the keys lightly. The touch was enough to bring a memory back vividly. The feel of the piano under her hands. The first note she had ever played perfectly. The thrill of learning something that felt like magic. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memory wash over her. The sound of the piano filled her mind, and she imagined playing again, even if just in her imagination. She remembered the lessons she had taken, the hours of practice, the sense of accomplishment when she learned a new piece. She had been good, really good, and for a moment she allowed herself to feel that pride again. It was a quiet, private feeling, but it reminded her that she was still capable of something beautiful, something powerful. The day ended, and the last teacher left the school. She turned off the lights, locked the doors, and began her journey home. Her body was tired, but her mind was alive with memories. As she walked through the empty streets, she thought about the piano, about the music that still lived inside her, and about the dreams that had never truly left. She knew that she would return the next day, sweep the floors, clean the classrooms, and remain invisible to most people. But in her heart, she carried a secret, a piece of herself that was waiting for the right moment to be seen, and so she continued her life. It's quiet, unnoticed, and steady. The school was her world, her work was her routine, and the piano was her secret companion. She moved through the halls, pushing her mop bucket, wiping the floors, and listening to the echoes of a life that had been full of possibilities. She carried her memories with her, her dreams tucked away safely, knowing that one day, perhaps the music would return. Until then, she remained the invisible woman of the school, the quiet cleaner who worked in the background, but inside, she was alive with music, alive with hope, and alive with the memory of a life that had once been filled with notes and melody. She arrived at the school the next morning before the sun had fully risen. The air was crisp, and the sky was a soft, pale blue. The quiet of the school felt different today, almost alive in a new way, as if it had remembered her from yesterday. She carried her mop bucket and cleaning supplies, moving slowly through the halls. Her mind wandered to the piano, and she found herself thinking more and more about it. The memory of music that had once been her whole world filled her with both warmth and a quiet sadness as she swept the classrooms. She thought about her past. Long ago, when she was much younger, music had been everything. She had spent hours practicing on a piano that had once belonged to her family. She remembered the feel of the keys beneath her fingers, the soft weight of each note, the thrill of playing a song perfectly for the first time. Music had been her escape, her joy, and her dream. She had wanted to be a pianist, to play in concerts and fill halls with her music, but life had other plans. She had married young, had children, and had to leave her dreams behind. The piano had been left in a corner of her home, covered with dust, a silent reminder of what she could no longer pursue. Her thoughts drifted to those years she had spent working hard, raising her family and taking care of everyone else. She had loved her family, of course, and found satisfaction in their happiness. But there had always been a small ache, a quiet emptiness where her dreams had once lived. Music was no longer part of her daily life, and she had learned to live without it, to find small moments of joy in the work she did and the people she helped. Yet the piano at school called to her in a way that no other thing had in years. It reminded her of who she had once been and who she could still be. When the first students arrived, she moved to the music room to start her cleaning. The piano was there, waiting as it always had been. She ran her hands over the polished wood, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingers. Memories came rushing back, the first time she had played a full song without mistakes. The applause of a small audience in a school recital long ago, the way her heart had raced with excitement. She smiled faintly, shaking her head at herself. She could not play here, not while the students were around. It was just a thought, a memory, a small piece of herself that she had kept hidden all these years. Her mind wandered further back, to when she had first started learning music. She had been a child with little else in her life, but music had opened a door to a world she had never known. She remembered the lessons with her first teacher, who had been patient and kind, guiding her hands over the keys, showing her how to listen to the sound and feel it in her heart. She had learned about scales, rhythm, and expression. Every lesson was a discovery, every note a small triumph. She had dreamed then that one day she would play on a stage with an audience listening in awe. But life had a way of closing doors when you least expected it. As she moved through the day, cleaning classrooms and hallways, she could not stop thinking about music. The sound of students playing in the hall, the laughter, even the occasional shriek of excitement reminded her of the joy she had once felt. She remembered practicing late into the night, the house silent except for the sound of her piano. Those nights had been magical, full of promise and hope. She realized now that she had been happy then, completely and utterly. Even though she had no idea what the future would hold, by the time lunch came, she found herself sitting alone in the corner of the staff room, as usual. She ate quietly, her thoughts drifting back to the piano. She wondered if she could ever play again, even just a little. She had not touched a piano in decades, and she was afraid she might not remember. But a small voice inside her told her that the music was still there, waiting, patient and forgiving, ready for her return whenever she chose. The afternoon was busy. As students moved from class to class and teachers hurried through their lessons, she continued her work, cleaning floors, dusting desks, and making sure everything was in order. She noticed a small poster on the wall announcing an upcoming school concert. A student was scheduled to play a solo on the piano, but she could see the nervousness in the student's eyes when rehearsals began. She remembered her own performances so many years ago. The nerves, the excitement, the deep connection to the music. She felt a pang of longing, wishing she could feel that again. As the day came to an end, she stayed a little longer, making sure the music room was tidy. She looked at the piano once more, and for the first time in years, she considered what it would feel like to sit down and play. She imagined the notes flowing under her fingers, the sound filling the empty room, the music bringing a sense of peace and joy she had not felt in decades. She knew she could not play while students were around, but just imagining it brought a warmth to her heart that she had almost forgotten. Walking home that evening, she thought about her life and the choices she had made. She had worked hard, raised her family, and done her best to care for those around her. She had sacrificed her own dreams for the good of others, and while there was pride in that, there was also a quiet ache. Music had been her first love, her companion in moments of solitude, and the thought of returning to it, even secretly, was both thrilling and terrifying. That night, she could not sleep. Her mind kept returning to the piano, to the memory of her hands moving over the keys, to the feeling of music filling her soul. She imagined the music so vividly that it almost felt real. She dreamed of a small, empty hall, a piano waiting for her, and her fingers moving with confidence and grace. When she woke in the morning, the memory lingered, bright and alive, as if the music itself had reached out to her across the years. The next day, she arrived at school with a renewed sense of purpose. She carried her cleaning supplies, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on the piano. She moved through the hallways with her usual care, but she could not stop thinking about the possibility of playing again. The memory of her youth, of her lessons and performances, filled her with a quiet determination. She knew that the music was still inside her. Waiting for the right moment to be released, she began her work as usual, cleaning classrooms and hallways, interacting politely with students and teachers, all the while feeling the pull of the piano stronger than ever. She touched the keys lightly as she passed by the music room, feeling the familiar smoothness, imagining the notes she could play. It was a secret thrill, a connection to a part of herself that had been silent for too long. She knew that one day, perhaps she would play again. The thought gave her energy and hope, a feeling she had not known in years. The day went on, and she continued her work with quiet diligence. She smiled at the students she passed, greeted teachers politely, and moved through the school with her usual calm. But inside, she was alive with music, imagining melodies, rhythms, and songs she had once loved. She knew that her dream had not truly died. It had only been waiting, patient and silent, until she was ready to return, as the sun set and the school emptied once more. She lingered in the hallways, her eyes on the piano. The memory of her past and the thought of her future combined into a quiet excitement. She knew that the piano would be waiting, as it always had, and that one day she would play again. The music had never left her. It was only a matter of time before it returned. The morning began like any other. She arrived at the school before the first students, carrying her mop bucket and supplies. Moving through the quiet halls that smelled faintly of chalk, dust, and lemon cleaner, everything seemed ordinary. But today, there was a sense of anticipation in the air, though she could not have explained why. The piano waited in the music room, still and silent, a familiar presence that seemed to call to her in a way that was impossible to ignore. As she cleaned classrooms, she noticed that one of the students, who was supposed to play in the school recital later that week, looked anxious. He had been practicing in the music room, but today he seemed tense, fidgeting with the sheet music, his brow furrowed. She watched from a distance, her heart going out to him. She remembered herself at that age, when every performance felt like a test of courage and skill, when every note carried weight and expectation. She had been in that place once, nervous and hopeful, dreaming of applause and the magic of music. By late morning, a small problem began to unfold. The scheduled pianist for the afternoon rehearsal had fallen ill unexpectedly. The music teacher looked around the room, panicked, unsure of what to do. There was a concert coming up, and without someone to play, the practice would be wasted. She stood quietly in the background, sweeping the hallway outside the music room. Listening to the worried voices, her heart beating a little faster than usual, a part of her felt a strange pull, a hint of something she could not name. The teacher, frustrated and desperate, glanced around the room. Her eyes fell on the cleaner, who had been quietly moving about her work. He hesitated, then asked, almost without thinking, if she could play anything at all. There was a stunned silence. She froze, caught between instinct and disbelief. Everyone in the room looked at her, a mixture of hope and doubt in their eyes. She had not played in years, not in front of anyone, not since her life had shifted and her dreams had been set aside. Her hands trembled slightly as she considered it. For a long moment she did not answer. The students stared, the teacher waited, and the silence pressed in. Then, quietly, she nodded. She moved toward the piano, each step measured, each movement careful. The room seemed to hold its breath. No one could believe what was happening. She had always been invisible, a quiet figure in the background, and now she was stepping into the center of attention. Her fingers hovered above the keys, feeling the smooth wood beneath them. The familiar sensation sparked something inside her, something she had not felt in decades. She took a deep breath and pressed down on the first key. The sound filled the room, soft and tentative at first. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memory guide her hands. Slowly, the notes began to flow, and the music took on a life of its own. It was not perfect at first, her fingers unsure after so many years. But the skill was still there, hidden beneath the years of silence. She felt the music moving through her, carrying her back to a time when she had been young and full of dreams. A time when the world seemed wide and full of possibilities. As she continued to play, the room grew quiet. The students stopped talking, the teacher ceased pacing, and even the clock seemed to slow down. The music filled the space, weaving through the air like a gentle breeze. Faces turned toward her, eyes widening in surprise. They had expected hesitation, maybe a few notes, but what they heard was something different, something extraordinary. The cleaner, the quiet woman who had always worked in the background, was playing with skill, emotion, depth that no one had anticipated. She played a piece that she had loved as a young woman, a song she had practiced for countless hours. Each note carried a story, each chord a memory. She could feel the music in her bones, in her hands, in her heart. It was as if she had never stopped playing, as if the years of absence had only made her stronger, more connected to the music than ever before. The students watched in awe, some with tears in their eyes, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The teacher could not hide the astonishment on his face. Realizing that this was not just a moment of convenience but a revelation, her fingers moved with confidence now, no longer tentative, no longer uncertain. The room was filled with sound, rich and full, and it seemed to lift the air itself. She felt a deep sense of joy and freedom, a release that she had not known in decades. The music flowed through her, connecting her to a part of herself that had been silent for too long. She felt alive in a way that went beyond the physical work she had done for years, beyond the quiet life she had led. In this moment, she was whole, complete and visible. Time seemed to blur. She lost track of minutes as she played, her mind focused only on the music. The students were captivated, leaning forward, listening to every note. Some of them had never seen her in this way, never imagined that the quiet cleaner could possess such talent. The room was filled with a mixture of awe, respect, and disbelief. She played with emotion, letting every memory, every feeling, every hidden dream pour out through her hands. The music told a story of life, of sacrifice, of longing, and of hope. As she neared the end of the piece, she felt a surge of emotion. Her hands moved with precision and grace, each note landing perfectly, each chord resonating deeply. The final note lingered in the air, a gentle echo that seemed to hang in the room. For a moment, there was silence, a stillness so profound that it felt as though the world had stopped to listen. Then, slowly, the room erupted. Applause, cheers, and gasps of amazement filled the space. The students clapped, some cried, the teacher could hardly believe what had just happened. She looked up, smiling faintly, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief, joy, and humility. The music had done more than fill the room. It had transformed it. The invisible woman, the cleaner who had moved quietly through the halls for decades, had revealed herself in a way that no one could have imagined. She had shown that talent and passion do not disappear with age, that dreams can survive even the longest periods of neglect, and that the human spirit can shine when given the right moment. The students and teachers surrounded her, their faces filled with wonder and admiration. They asked her questions, praised her playing, and expressed their astonishment. She listened quietly, smiling, feeling a deep sense of connection and gratitude. After the excitement subsided, she returned to her work, but things were different now. The halls no longer felt the same. Students looked at her differently. Teachers treated her with new respect. She felt a sense of pride and validation that she had not known for decades. She continued to clean, to sweep, and to care for the school, but the memory of that moment, the joy of playing the piano, would stay with her forever. It was a turning point, a day when the invisible became visible, when hidden talent was revealed, and when a lifetime of quiet dreams found their voice that night. As she walked home, the memory of the music lingered in her mind. She could still feel the piano under her fingers, the sound vibrating in her chest, the emotion flowing through her veins. She realized that life had given her a gift, a chance to reconnect with a part of herself she thought she had lost. She smiled, feeling hope and excitement for what might come next. The music had returned, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose, confidence, and joy. She knew that this was only the beginning, that there were still many notes to play, many stories to tell, and many dreams to reclaim. The next day, the school seemed different. There was a quiet energy in the hallways, a sense that something unexpected had happened yesterday. Students whispered as they passed by. Teachers exchanged curious glances. She felt the subtle change in the way people looked at her. She moved through the halls with her usual calm, carrying her mop bucket and cleaning supplies. but her mind was alive with the memory of playing the piano, the feeling of music coursing through her fingers, the sound filling the room, and the reactions of everyone around her. The moment had awakened something inside her, a part of herself she had not felt in years. She arrived at the music room as the morning began. The piano sat waiting, familiar and silent. She touched the keys lightly, feeling the smooth wood beneath her fingers, the weight of the instrument calling to her. She closed her eyes for a moment and let her mind drift back to the previous day, to the notes she had played, the music that had flowed through her, and the astonished faces of students and teachers alike. There was a quiet thrill, a sense of possibility that she could not ignore. She knew that she wanted to play again, to experience that feeling fully, to let the music speak for her. As the day moved forward, she continued her work, cleaning classrooms, sweeping hallways, and tidying up spaces that had been left in disarray. The students noticed her more than before. Some stopped to say hello, others smiled knowingly. And a few lingered near the music room, curious about what she might do next. She felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Yesterday had been an accident, a moment that happened because there was no one else to play. Today, the anticipation of what she could do with a bit more freedom made her heart race by afternoon. The music room was quiet, and she decided to take a small risk. She sat down at the piano, her hands hovering above the keys. She played a few gentle notes, testing herself, letting the music flow slowly at first. The sound was rich, familiar, and comforting. She smiled as she remembered how it had felt to play for herself, alone, without pressure or expectation. The notes carried memories of her youth, of lessons and practice, of a time when music had been her world. She let the feeling guide her fingers, playing melodies that had been in her heart for decades. A few students wandered by and stopped at the door, watching quietly. They had not expected to see her playing again, and they were drawn in by the sound. The music was different from yesterday. It was not a performance for anyone else. It was for herself, for the joy of playing, for the release of years of quiet longing. The melodies were soft, then grew in strength, carrying emotion and depth. The students were captivated, leaning closer, eyes wide, sensing something extraordinary in the way she played. The piano, the woman, and the music seemed to fill the room with life and emotion. The teacher entered, curious about the sound. When he saw her at the piano, his eyes widened in surprise. He had thought yesterday's performance was a one-time miracle, a lucky moment, but now he realized it was something more. She was not just talented, she was remarkable. He stood quietly, not wanting to interrupt as she played, letting the music guide her. Her hands moved with confidence and grace, every note deliberate and full of feeling. It was as if she had never stopped playing, as if the years had only strengthened her connection to the piano. The room became still, almost sacred. The students gathered at the doorway, mesmerized by the sound. They had never seen anyone play like this before, and they could feel the emotion in every note. The music seemed to tell a story not just of skill, but of life, of struggles, sacrifices, hidden dreams finally finding their voice. They watched, silent and respectful, as she played with a depth and maturity that could only come from experience. Every chord carried a story, every melody, a lifetime of memories. She played for a long time, losing track of minutes as the music flowed through her. She felt alive in a way that went beyond physical movement or daily routine. The piano had become an extension of herself, a way to express everything she had kept inside for so long. She played pieces that were familiar, but she added her own interpretation, her own emotion, shaping the music with the wisdom of her years. The students and teacher remained silent, caught up in the magic of the moment, unsure if they had ever heard anything so beautiful. As she neared the end of her playing, she felt a sense of completion. She hit the final notes, letting them resonate fully, and then slowly lifted her hands from the keys. The room was silent for a moment, the sound lingering in the air like a gentle echo. Then the students began to clap, softly at first, then more enthusiastically. The teacher joined in, his face full of admiration and awe. They surrounded her, their faces bright with excitement, asking questions, praising her, and expressing their amazement. She smiled quietly, feeling a mixture of humility and pride. her heart full of warmth and satisfaction. The performance had done more than fill the room with music. It had transformed the way people saw her. She was no longer invisible, no longer just the quiet cleaner in the background. She was someone with talent, passion, and a story to tell. The students looked at her with respect and curiosity. The teacher with admiration, and she felt a connection that she had not felt in years. The music had broken through the walls of routine and expectation, revealing something extraordinary in an ordinary life. After the applause died down, she returned to her work, but the feeling remained. The hallways, classrooms, and music room felt different now. People acknowledged her, smiled at her, and treated her with a new level of respect. She continued her cleaning, sweeping floors, and tidying up. But she carried the music with her, the joy of playing, and the knowledge that she had shared a piece of herself with the world. The piano had become a symbol of hope, of hidden talent, and of the power of following a dream, no matter how late in life it might. When she walked home that evening, the memory of her playing stayed with her. She could still feel the notes under her fingers, the sound filling the room, the reactions of students and teacher. She realized that music had returned to her life, bringing a sense of purpose, joy, and connection that she had thought was lost forever. She smiled quietly to herself, feeling grateful for the moment, for the courage to play, and for the beauty that had been waiting for her all these years. She knew that this was only the beginning, that the piano would continue to be a part of her life, and that there were still many melodies and stories waiting to be shared. The following morning, she arrived at the school feeling a mixture of anticipation and calm. The sun had just begun to rise, painting the hallways in soft golden light. Everything felt ordinary on the surface, yet she knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Her footsteps echoed faintly as she moved through the halls, the mop bucket in hand, carrying her cleaning supplies with her usual careful precision. But today, there was a quiet excitement in the air, almost as if the school itself had noticed her, as if the walls remembered the music that had filled them the day before. She started her routine, moving through classrooms and corridors, sweeping floors, wiping desks, and picking up stray papers. Students arrived, their chatter filling the hallways, but their glances were different today. There was curiosity in their eyes, a subtle respect that had not been there before. A few students paused, whispering to each other, and she smiled quietly, sensing that the story of her playing the piano had already begun to spread. It was a strange and wonderful feeling, knowing that people were beginning to see her in a new light, that they had glimpsed something extraordinary hidden within someone they had always overlooked. By mid-morning, she found herself in the music room again. The piano stood waiting, familiar and inviting. She ran her hand over the smooth, polished surface, feeling the comforting weight of the instrument beneath her fingers. She thought of the notes she had played the day before, the melodies that had flowed effortlessly, and the way the room had seemed to hold its breath, listening. She smiled, remembering the astonishment on the faces of the students and the teacher, the applause that had followed, and the deep satisfaction that had filled her heart. It was a memory she would carry forever, a moment that had changed the way she saw herself and the way others saw her. The music teacher approached quietly, a warm smile on his face. He spoke softly, almost reverently, asking if she would consider playing again for the upcoming school concert. She paused, taken aback by the suggestion. The idea of performing in front of a larger audience, sharing her music with even more people, was both thrilling and intimidating. Yet beneath the nervousness, there was a spark of excitement, a sense that this was the next step, a chance to reclaim a part of herself she had kept hidden for decades. She nodded slowly, a quiet determination in her eyes. She would do it. She would play, and she would let the music speak. In the days that followed, she continued her work at the school, but her routine had a new dimension. Each day, she spent a few quiet moments in the music room, practicing on the piano when no one else was around. Her fingers moved with growing confidence, relearning techniques she had forgotten, discovering new ways to express emotion through sound. The music became a lifeline, a bridge between the life she had led and the dreams she had set aside. She felt a joy that had been dormant for years, a freedom that came from reconnecting with her passion. With each note, she grew stronger, more confident, and more certain that she could rise to the challenge of the concert. Word of her talent continued to spread through the school. Students talked about her playing, their excitement and admiration evident in their voices. Teachers began to recognize her contributions in a new light, acknowledging not just her work as a cleaner, but the remarkable person she was beyond her duties. The sense of respect and appreciation grew, and she felt a warmth and validation she had never experienced before. It was as if the music had lifted her out of invisibility, giving her a place in the school that was no longer defined solely by her work, but by the gift she had shared with everyone. The day of the concert arrived. The auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and parents, all eager to hear the performances. She entered quietly, carrying herself with a calm confidence, her hands lightly brushing the keys of the piano as she approached. The music teacher introduced her with a few words, but it was the moment she touched the keys that truly spoke. As her fingers pressed down, the first notes rang out clear and strong, filling the room with sound that was both familiar and extraordinary. The audience fell silent, captivated by the music. Sensing the depth of emotion and experience in every note, she played with grace, confidence, and feeling that seemed to transcend the years she had spent away from the piano. Each piece told a story, a journey through life, memory, and emotion. The students watched in awe, some with tears in their eyes. Parents exchanged astonished glances, and the teachers were visibly moved. Her performance was not just about technical skill. It was about expression, about conveying the beauty and struggle of life through music. Every note resonated with truth and authenticity, touching the hearts of everyone in the room. When she finished, the silence lingered for a moment, as if the audience was holding its breath, not wanting to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause erupted, growing into a wave of sound that filled the auditorium. Cheers, clapping, and exclamations of amazement echoed through the space. People stood, some wiping tears from their eyes, others smiling with wonder and joy. She looked up from the piano, feeling the warmth and love radiating from the audience. For the first time in decades, she felt fully seen, fully acknowledged, fully alive. After the concert, students and teachers surrounded her, expressing their admiration and gratitude. They asked questions about her life, her practice, and how she had come to play with such skill and emotion. She listened quietly, smiling, humbled by the attention, yet filled with a quiet pride. She realized that her life had changed in ways she had never imagined. She was no longer just the quiet cleaner moving through the school. She was a musician, an inspiration, a reminder that it is never too late to reclaim a dream. The following days were filled with small celebrations. Students asked her to teach them simple pieces, to share her knowledge and experience. Teachers sought her advice on music and performance. She found herself engaging with the school community in ways she had never done before. The music had opened doors not just to recognition, but to connection, friendship, and respect. She had discovered that sharing her talent was not just about performance, but about building relationships, inspiring others, and creating joy in the lives of those around her. She continued to work at the school, cleaning classrooms, sweeping halls, attending to her duties, but the difference was profound. She moved through the halls with a new sense of purpose, a quiet confidence, and the knowledge that she was valued not just for her work, but for who she was and what she could give. The piano had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of dreams. It had reminded her, and everyone around her, that age does not limit talent, that hidden potential can shine when given the chance, and that life is full of possibilities, even in its later chapters. Her life outside the school also changed. She found herself invited to small local events to play, sharing her music with neighbors and friends who had never known her story. She received letters and messages from people who had heard about her performance, expressing their admiration and inspiration. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a joy that came not from fame or recognition, but from doing what she loved and seeing the effect it had on others. She had finally reclaimed a piece of herself, a dream that had been buried but never forgotten. Every day she returned to the piano with gratitude and excitement. She practiced, explored new pieces, and refined her skill, finding pleasure in the process as much as in the performance. The music had become a companion, a source of joy, a way to express herself and connect with the world. She had discovered that the power of music lies not just in the notes, but in the heart and soul of the person who plays it. And in playing, she had found her own voice, her own story, and her own place in the world. Years of quiet service and unacknowledged talent had finally come together in a moment that changed everything. She had shown that life does not have to follow a single path, that dreams can wait and return, and that the human spirit is capable of remarkable things at any age. The school had gained not just a cleaner, but a musician, a mentor, and an inspiration. She had gained recognition, joy, and the knowledge that her life had purpose and meaning beyond what she had ever imagined. As she moved through the hallways now, students smiled and waved, teachers greeted her warmly, and the piano in the music room stood as a constant reminder of what had been lost and what had been found. She had faced a lifetime of quiet, invisible work, and in a single, unplanned moment, had revealed the extraordinary talent that had been waiting all along. The music had transformed her,